It's Q&A show number 1 here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. And is the closer for the 2025 roster on the team right now? We're going to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith. I am back. Sorry that I had a very grueling migraine over the last 2 days and a sore throat, among many other things that were going on physically with me. So thank you guys for always tuning into this show. Apologies for no episodes over the last 2 days. But we're back, and what that means is we're going to have a show today, we're going to have a show on Saturday, and we're going to have a show on Sunday. So get ready for all of those, because then we're going to go right into the next week on Monday to, I guess, celebrate the final week of Pirates baseball in 2024. I guess that's what we'll be doing. Anyways, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you go to FanDuel.com right now for all of your betting needs. I just bet a lot on college football and NFL football this weekend, so that's always fun. And I asked you guys a few days ago, when I thought that I wouldn't have a migraine, to ask some questions that I would feature on the show as full segments. Usually with these Q&A shows, I tend to just go bada bing, bada boom, Mr. Worldwide, I step in the room. But I usually tend to go do that and just do like all the questions in one show. But instead, I wanted to try something a little different this time. I wanted to kind of, formulate it into different parts for you and kind of broaden out these questions, because a lot of the questions do have a lot of meaning. I mean, they really do. A lot of these questions that you guys asked were very good ones. And Rick Ferguson, I think, asked one of the better questions. Is the Pirates 2025 closer currently on the roster? Now, the bullpen has been the talk of this team for a large part of the year. Beginning of the season, you guys heard me discuss this bullpen as a group that I thought could be one of the best in baseball. I thought this was a group in Colin Holderman, Aroldis Chapman, and David Bednar that could really shut down games. And that's why I predicted the Pirates to exceed their win total this year, just because I felt that with that back end of the bullpen, that they would be able to shut down games and really just be a unit that did not allow a lot of runs, did not allow a lot of base runners, etc. But it hasn't happened that way. David Bednar, who was the team's closer for quite a while, and was eventually, probably too late, taken out of that role, started the year with that lat strain and didn't really get a spring training. Didn't go on the IL, mind you, either, which I think he should have. Personally, I think he should have went on the IL. It could have even been the 10-day IL. And I think that would have probably helped him by leaps and bounds this year, because you're looking at a guy in David Bednar who, won his whole just mantra and moxie and confidence and everything has just gone on the wayside for him this year. This is his worst season that he's ever had. Probably will be the worst season that David Bednar ever has. And ultimately, I just don't think he ever got the chance to get fully healthy. And you just look at the pitches and how they've been this year. The fastball, he isn't locating it whatsoever, and that's his bread and butter. The 12-6 curveball, he can hardly throw it for strikes anymore. So players and opposing hitters are just not even really toying with it unless it hangs, which he's done a lot this year. And the changeup even has not been that great either. But I think it all starts with the fact that those pitches work well when his fastball works well. And you haven't seen that from David Bednar this year. And it's unfortunate. It really is, because we do love David Bednar here. Pittsburgh kid, Mars, PA, all-star in his good times. And unfortunately, he was one of the catalysts for why the Pirates are in the position they are. But he's not the only one. Aroldis Chapman has had his moments. A little bit different on the side of talking about Aroldis Chapman, just because, do we really know if Aroldis Chapman is going to be back in 2024? Or 2025, sorry. We don't really know that yet. And I would like to have him back. I think he had a very strong season this year. I think he's going to end the season strong. He's stepped in as the closer at times. He's been one of the better setup guys they've had, and arguably the most consistent reliever. My God, yeah, right? Aroldis Chapman and consistency. What am I, a freaking lunatic? But you look at what the bullpen has been, and he has arguably been, from beginning to end, their most consistent reliever this year. And it's hard to argue. And then there's Colin Holderman, who even last season, I would have used him as a closer in some roles, but he was one of the best setup pitchers in all of baseball in 2023. And this year, I argued that he should have been a damn all-star before the all-star break. And then post all-star break, he just couldn't figure it out. And those were the three guys that this bullpen really leaned on. And these were the three guys that really were the reason why the bullpen had the ebbs and flows that it had. I mean, yeah, you have Kyle Nicholas and Karma Majinski, the lack of Dowry Moretta this season. You've had Dennis Santana be quite the surprise. But you also saw some guys that you don't need to see again, like Ben Heller. You saw them trade Luis Peralta for Jalen Beeks. Jalen Beeks probably ain't going to be here next year. So you're looking at this bullpen structure, and you wonder, how is this going to formulate itself in 2025? Well, when you look at the bullpen currently, David Bednar, Chapman, Majinski, Holderman, Nicholas, Santana, Baraki, who might not be back next year, Jalen Beeks, Dalton Jeffries won't be back next year, Joey Wentz won't be back next year, Hunter Stratton, Isaac Mattson won't be back next year. So when you go back to the question, is the closer for 2025 on this roster? I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say that it's going to be David Bednar. Now, for fans, that can get a little annoying because of what we've seen this year. But also go back to what I mentioned about David Bednar a few minutes ago. He was not healthy this year. He has an entire offseason to get healthy. And on top of that, change some things up, because he's going to have to change something. The pitches are being tipped a little bit. He's getting rocked. But I think he's still your closer going into next year. Now, free agency and the trade market could change that landscape pretty hefty, because you could go and get that Aroldis Chapman type if you want, and you could do that. And they might do that anyway and still keep David Bednar as the closer. These are things that they could do. Now, will they? I don't know. But if you had to ask me from my just fan perspective and professional thought process, I think David Bednar will be the closer in 2025. Disagree with that if you want. But also, I'm here to tell you that David Bednar is not going to be as bad as he was this season, because it is virtually impossible for him to be as bad as he's been this year. And on top of that, knock on wood, he will be healthy next year. Those two things alone will make him a valuable closer again. Now, I wouldn't extend him by any means. I don't even think that's on the cards anymore. But yeah, I would say right now it's going to be David Bednar. Could I see it maybe, Bolton, getting weird. Could I see it maybe be Johan Oviedo? Keep that one in your memory bank. Could I see it be a Dowry Moretta? Probably not, because he's not going to be ready by season's beginning. I don't think Oviedo will be either. Other than that, I don't really see where you have many options out inside the organization. Outside, who knows? So that's my thought process on the bullpen going into next year for now. Obviously, it can change a little bit. And also, don't forget, folks, we're not far away from the player review series, the 2024 player review series, where we're going to talk all about these players, all about these position groups, and all about that stuff. And another group that we're going to talk about when that comes around is the catching position. How's catching going to look in 2025 for this team? We'll discuss on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Folks, a lot of you may be getting ready to retire. Some of you may be wanting to collect for retirement very early. So get started at Robinhood.com/boost, because with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for just $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. So again, go to Robinhood.com/boost and Robinhood.com/gold today. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After making this your first listen of the day, make sure you listen to, make sure you listen to Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He's getting you ready for the the Fall Classic that's coming up in a few weeks. Still some fun races going on in the baseball world before we get into talking about Joey Bart and Henry Davis. If you look at the wild card right now, the Mets 2 games up on the Atlanta Braves, right there with the Arizona Diamondbacks too. So kind of still a little tight race going on in the National League. Meanwhile, in the American League, the surging Detroit Tigers have tied the Minnesota Twins for the final American League wild card spot. So things are just rummaging around and getting crazy. But we'll see how it goes over the next 2 weeks. Well, this weekend and then next week. That's really it for baseball this year. And when you talk about this year, when you're talking about the catcher position specifically, I do think it's pretty interesting, and I want to find who asked this question. Let me look this up for you real quick. But when you're talking about the catching position of this Pirates team, it is interesting. And this was from Alex. Do you expect the Pirates to move forward with Bart and Davis as the catcher next year? Or do we see Davis being used as a trade chip to bring in something else in or signing a vet? So a lot to unpack there with that question. I'm not even going to bury the lead here. Joey Bart is going to be the starting catcher in 2025. Period. He's had a phenomenal season. He's done just about everything he can to be the starting catcher and has been. 230 at-bats, 257 average, 798 OPS, 13 homers, 43 RBIs. One of the biggest surprises of the 2024 season for the Pittsburgh Pirates has been Joey Bart. He was just cast away from the San Francisco Giants, and the Pirates bring him in. I will be honest with you, I didn't expect much, but I've been pleasantly surprised. And I've liked everything that I've seen from Joey so far. You look at Henry Davis, currently on the IL, didn't take that next step whatsoever this year. 104 at-bats, just dreadful, only one home run. Yasmani Grandal, who hit the home run to get one victory in St. Louis last night, will not be here next year. Don't even flirt with the idea. Don't even worry about it. He will not be here next year. So on the MLB roster currently, it's just Joey Bart and Henry Davis. I've already mentioned that Joey is going to be the starter. Now, a lot of this also hinges on what you do with Endy Rodriguez, who I got to see a week ago in Altoona. And boy, I'll tell you what, the kid put on some muscle. A lot of it. And I guess, I mean, hey, when you're recovering from Tommy John or UCL surgery, all you got to do is go. But really, it just depends on what you do with him. Do you move him to first base, which has been kind of the sexy pick? Let's put Endy Rodriguez at first base. Also kind of depends on what we talked about on Tuesday. Does Brian Reynolds move to first? But the thing is, with Endy Rodriguez specifically, I don't like seeing people just kind of pen him onto the MLB roster right away when 2025 starts. The kid has not seen MLB pitching now for almost a year. He's not going to see MLB pitching probably until May, maybe June of next season. That's worrisome. And on top of that, he hasn't really done that much at the MLB level anyway to warrant just getting a spot. We're past that. We're not just giving guys spots anymore. We're just past that. Billy Cook and Nick York, yeah, great. They're playing good. Let's see what they do next year. And if they go into the season starting Billy Cook and Nick York somewhere, yikes. That's all I'll say on that. But catching-wise, a large part of it does depend on what you do with Endy. Endy appears that he wants to catch still. I don't know how confident I am in that. But if he does want to catch, then that's fine. But then you have a lot of questions to answer. Because having three catchers, it's a lot. Now, a lot of that, of course, hinges on the play of Henry Davis, who could have his own Joey Bart kind of way of his career, where he just is a late bloomer. And that's what I think he'll be once he gets out of his head. Endy Rodriguez, meanwhile, it just really hinges on how he throws behind the plate. I mean, that's elbow surgery on your throwing arm. That's a big deal. And, of course, he hit his first home run with Indianapolis yesterday. Only going to be there for a little bit. Just still going through the motions. Jason DeLay is still on this team, too. Not on the MLB roster, but still there. He could be a guy that could be of service. I always liked him as a backup catcher. I thought that he was more than serviceable. And I understood why they got Yasmani Grandal this year. And kind of thankful they did, or else they would have been forced to play Henry Davis. And honestly, just be happy that Joey Bart's here, because if Joey Bart wasn't here, they really would have been forced to play Henry Davis. And right now, I don't think Henry needs to play. I think he needs to get into the offseason, work his tail off like he has before, and come into 2025 ready to rock. Because if he doesn't do much in 2025, folks, that's when you start to worry. 3 years into it, that's when you start to worry. But remember, this is also a kid that came up very quickly. Could that have been a mistake? Maybe. Could it have not been a mistake? Who knows? But Joey Bart will be the starting catcher, and I don't really have any qualms about that at all. Joey Bart will be the starter. It's just more of what happens behind him. I would imagine that it starts with Henry Davis, maybe Endy Rodriguez, if that's what they want him to do. Now, if they move Endy to first, then you have some different ideas. Maybe you do bring in a veteran. And I could see them doing that anyway. You always need catching. But you do still have Jason DeLay. Not much else in the system. But hey, that's how it works. But don't expect anything outside of number 14 behind the plate because he will be there. Now, to end today's show, we have a question again about something that feels like I've been talking about it for a while. The infield logjam. Pirates have a lot of options going on in that middle infield right now. So how do they handle it? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. They have millions of parts for your MVP, and you can win every time with parts that fit your ride, because passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships and also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And folks, thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do. To my everydayers, love you. Sorry that I missed the last 2 days. To all my loyal listeners, third segment listeners, hello. How you doing? And the Pirates have, I believe, 10 games left. It's 9 games. 9 games left. And if you're on the go, want to listen to it, go to SiriusXM, type in Pirates, and you'll be able to listen to all the Pirates games that you want on the go. Dave O'Donnell has our final question today on Q&A Show 1. Again, Q&A Show 2 will be tomorrow. Q&A Show 3 will be on Sunday. There's a log jam in the infield. Who's out? He has a very quick and easy question here. So when you go right now and you look at how things look, you have Jared Triolo, Nick Gonzalez, Nick York, maybe. IKF, even though I like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa more at third base, but that they've been playing him at shortstop. And that's really it. I mean, you got Jared Triolo, Nick York, Nick Gonzalez, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I wouldn't exactly call it a logjam that much, mainly because I've liked what I've seen from Nick Gonzalez this year. He's shown me a lot more with the bat than he did previously. Defensively, I think he'll only get better. I think he'll be an average defender for the most part of his career, but if he continues to hit, it doesn't matter. Then there's Jared Triolo, who, interestingly enough, has had quite the ending to the season. As a full sample size, not much. I mean, 368 as far as at bats, 618 OPS. But over his last 30 games, he has a 271 average and hit for a little bit of power. 4 home runs, 15 RBIs in his last 30 games. Had a 3 hits in his last 3. So Jared Triolo is an interesting player. He can play anywhere in the infield. He can pretty much do anything he needs to defensively. Then you go to IKF. Same deal. IKF can play anywhere in the infield pretty much. And this year, in the middle of one of his best offensive seasons ever, 276 average, 705 OPS, a career 667 OPS guy. So that's what you see there. But as mentioned, I do think that I'd like him over at third. And then there's Nick York, who just debuted a few days ago, already has an RBI, has a couple of hits in his 15 at-bats. Young kid, top 10 prospect, high contact guy. We'll see what happens there. He can also play the outfield too. So we'll see what happens there with Nick York. And really, I mean, that's it. Do I expect Termarr Johnson to debut in 2025? Maybe. I consider it unlikely, and if it were to happen, it'll be late in the year. But I would like to see this team go out and get a real shortstop, because IKF is not, I just don't think he cuts it there. I'm not saying he's a bad defender there, but you can get better defense at the shortstop position than IKF. And is IKF a guarantee to hit like he did this year? I don't think so. I mean, you heard what I said about his career OPS and his career splits. They're not as good as they've been this year. It's a big reason why they traded for him from Toronto, is because he was in the running for a batting title. You never really heard that before with IKF. So I would like them to go out and get a real shortstop. So I don't necessarily think that anybody will be out per se. You'll just see some very good depth at the position. Maybe you flirt around with trading one of these guys. I don't know. But you also have to factor in that Liover Peguero will be going into his 4th year on the 40-man roster next season. So he could be an option. But do you want to go into the season with him as an option, especially if you're trying to contend? I don't know. So the Pirates have some questions once again to answer in the middle infield. That was a big talking point at the beginning of this year as well. And tomorrow, folks, we're going to answer more of your questions here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. Folks, my name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. You can find the show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you every Monday through Friday when I'm not sick. But you will be getting shows Saturday and Sunday, so be on the lookout. Turn on the notification bell, subscribe, and have a beautiful rest of your Friday. And until tomorrow, we'll see you on the flip side.